Hello, healers and health seekers. It's me, Ichota, healing with medical medium information for 3 years and 11 months now. And guess what we're doing today? It's another interview where we get to share more awesome medical medium community member stories. And today we have Catlin, and I am going to talk to her about her healing story. Hi, Kat.
Hey, how are you, Ichota?
I'm great. I'm so happy to have you here. I love sharing healing stories. Kat and I have been following each other on Instagram, I think, as long as I've been healing. I don't know. I think, how long have you been on this path?
On Instagram? Oh gosh, I don't even know.
Or how long have you been following the medical medium information?
Let's see. I got tuned on to Anthony. It was in early summer of 2015.
Oh, so you're like a year longer than me. That's awesome.
Yeah.
Awesome.
It was after it was like a weird series of experiences, like kind of coincidences that led me to meet somebody who then mentioned Anthony William and, the medical medium. And at first I was like, what? I was very suspicious, but she was so sincere and so delightful. And I kept, there was like a voice in the back of my mind that said, just be open, just be open. And, so I got done talking with her. I wrote down the information. I went home and got right online and started looking at his stuff, because back then he was doing radio shows. He had some blog stuff. So it was before the book came out. So anyhow, I really liked what I was reading and what he was saying, and it made a lot of sense. So I started listening to him more. And even his radio shows, the first ones I listened to, I still was like, who is this guy? And he's got a voice, like, come on. I was very skeptical. I've never followed anybody like a medium,
right.
Ever. So, but yeah, and, little by little, I started realizing, like, this is exactly what, like, everything he said, even though he was annoying to me. Now I love him, of course, but in the beginning, not so much. But everything he said really rang true.
Yeah.
And it made perfect sense. When I looked back at my whole history, I could see, like, all the light bulbs started just going off in my brain about, oh my God, this makes sense. And now this makes sense. And why I had that when I was a child. And, it was so bizarre and then I was hooked.
Were you ill when you found medical medium?
I was dealing with Hashimotos, thyroiditis, and Lichen sclerosus, 2 autoimmune diseases. And so I had those. But like when I first got introduced to him, I didn't even think about the migraines, the menopausal symptoms, the chronic allergies, the headaches, the bald spots. Like, none of that was on my radar. I just always thought, that's just the way I am, or, I'm getting older, or whatever.
Yep.
It was the autoimmune diseases that got me. And even the first one, Hashimotos, I thought, okay, I can live with this. I take a pill, I'll be fine. But then a year later, I was diagnosed with the Lichen sclerosus, and that was a really difficult diagnosis.
What are some of the symptoms? I'm not as familiar with lichen sclerosus.
So lichen sclerosus is one of those diseases that mostly women get, although sometimes men and children can get it as well. And it really is the result of a dermatoxin, but where it emerges is in our vaginal area.
Oh my gosh.
It's really hard. And so what happens too is that, like, people don't talk about it because, it's awkward. You can go anywhere and say, like, oh, I have a thyroid disease, and nobody thinks so. But you can't go, you don't go around to a cocktail party and talk about, your
Right.
vagina.
And
So
is it like itching and burning and pain, that kind of?
it can be itching, burning. The tissue gets very thin and fragile. It
Oh,
actually starts to turn like white instead of like that pink peachy color, or whatever your natural skin tone might be.
right.
Because the blood vessels seem to pull away from the skin tissue, and so you're prone to tearing.
Oh my gosh.
Um, and so, yeah, the doctor puts the fear of God into you when you're diagnosed about this. Like, oh, you can't do this, you can't do that, you can't do this ever, blah, blah, blah. You can't, you can't, you can't. And
What
then,
are
of course,
the like medical treatments for it? What do they
there's
suggest?
only clobetasol, which is a mild steroid to control the itching so that you don't tear, and create
Oh my
lesion.
gosh. Yeah.
So it's very hard, and even then, that is iffy. Like for some people, it can be helpful. For other people, not so much. So it's not a shingles. It's actually, as Anthony explains it, it's a little more related to uh, eczema.
Okay.
So but because
Ooh.
just for whatever reason, the outbreak doesn't happen on our arms or our legs, it's drawn to the area of the vagina and whatever, or penis if you've got, if you're a male. And that's just where it comes out, the dermatoxin.
Right.
So, but of course it's all rooted, in the from the liver and all that. It's not rooted in the vaginal area. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah. I
That's just
can
where the expression comes.
I can definitely see why that would be your main focus, and you'd be like, I can live with Hashimoto's. You know what I mean? Like I can so see why that, yep, that would absolutely be like the number one forefront of
Yeah.
anything.
So I was 41 when I got diagnosed with that. And I was like, what? And that's when else it was like, okay, I get it. My body is attacking itself. And and so that was a real emotional hard hitter.
Yeah.
And then because it hits that area, and I've talked to a lot of women over the years now since I came out with my story. For a long time I wouldn't talk about it, because I felt very shamed. I thought I was being punished, I was a bad person, all that stuff.
Yeah.
um, it affects your relationships, your ability to be intimate, and that creates an added emotional strain, and the partner doesn't get it, and the partner feels like you're not as attractive. So all this stuff really snowballs into a huge shitstorm. Excuse my language.
No, that's appropriate, I think.
uh, yeah. So anyway, that got my attention, and I was like, I am going to find a cure. And my doctor was like,
Good
yeah,
luck.
help
Right.
with that.
Yeah.
But I was determined. So that's when my quest really started. That was at 41, and I didn't really find Anthony until I was 50, 55.
Oh my gosh.
So I had 14 years in there kind of trying to find my way, and I read all kinds of books, and I followed different, gurus, and I tried different things.
Right.
And, I had little moments where some things got better, but never the LS, and of course the Hashimoto's, I just stayed on the medication and kept going until I started with medical medium stuff.
So I have to ask, how long did it take then for your symptoms of LS to start to resolve?
To ease up. So they started to ease up pretty quickly for me. They didn't completely resolve, but I know what happens is, at least for my healing journey, is that like it's never like an on or off switch. It's like
Right.
a slow lift,
Yes. Yeah.
and like the fog, kind of slowly lifting. So I would notice that I would go longer periods without symptoms, longer stretches of time, and longer and longer. And then I noticed that the tearing, started easing up, and yeah, those for me were the biggest issues. Once so the itching left, and so let's see, how long was that? It was probably, I don't know, probably a year maybe. And sometimes I wasn't even always aware of it. Like, I didn't want to declare myself cured for a long time because I was afraid it would come back.
Right. Like I'll jinx it if I say anything.
Right.
Yeah. Yeah.
So so I always considered myself, I'm healing.
Yeah.
But I learned, so many, there were some side roots to this that develop. Emotional trauma can also create in the vaginal wall, and the whole myofascial. I don't know if you've ever explored any of the myofascial tissue in our our bodies and whatever. Well, we have all that happening also. The whole vaginal canal, I mean, think about it, people with babies, it's all muscle, right? And it expands to release a baby, and it contracts. When you've had emotional trauma, all different kinds, you can get those muscles can become more rigid and stiff, right, and clamp down. So through my 14 years of handling this, it was very emotional and very upsetting for lots of different reasons. And so I a long time associated that muscle tightness with being symptomatic of the LS. And it was tangentially, but it wasn't the dermatoxin causing it. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
It was the emotional trauma from being diagnosed, being the fear of God being put into me about it, dealing with, my relationship with my husband and all that. And that's what, and then my own, like, just fear of my own body.
Right. What's it going to attack next, right? It's attacked my thyroid, and now it's, my...
Well, right. And plus, being intimate and dealing with all that, and the potential for tearing, it creates this fear. So it's a clench, so that came more recently, where the awareness of the whole muscle issue and how that can be addressed through other treatments. So that's been a huge, like, oh, I always associated the two together when in fact they're slightly different. You know what I mean? So once that piece of the puzzle it was like the last piece of the puzzle. And once that got put into place, then it was like, okay, so I have been healed from the LS. Now I have to heal from the emotional trauma,
right?
And work on that piece, and the muscle, getting back that flexibility in that muscle tissue. So, so that's been the other big thing.
That's amazing. That's amazing that you've come through all of that. That's a lot. I thought you were going to say, and then when I was 45, I found, or something like that. I thought it was, and then I was like, whoa, that is, I mean, I'm not laughing, like that was a nervous laugh, but
no, that's okay. I get it.
Really hard, but I'm just, that's amazing. That's amazing that you lived with it for that long. And
for a long time.
Yeah, that would definitely create.
And that was why else, like, a big part of my motive for just get to us is to talk about it, is because I don't want people to have to be in shame, because it's not their fault.
Right.
They're, and Anthony teaches us that from the beginning. Our body is not attacking itself. There is a way to address this. Yes, eczema is challenging. It can take a while, but it's possible and it's doable, and your symptoms can ease up. And then also addressing the emotional issue. And, you know, there are like private groups and, you know, other things that will have LS support groups, but it's very hard for people to come out in the open and talk about it because they experience a lot of emotion and shame.
Yeah.
But that was one of the first things I thought, you know what? I am not going to let shame keep me in the closet about this, you know, anymore. So, and that was a huge help to my emotional recovery as well, is to step out and talk about it, you know.
I think
So
it's amazing that you do, because I can just imagine that there are so many women who do suffer, and men who suffer from that. And then, yeah, having somebody who's willing to say, I suffered from that and I was able to heal it. And you're not, it makes such a difference to have somebody say, this is not your fault. This is not something you did to yourself. There's no shame in this. It's just something that happened to you and you deserve to heal. I mean, you're making such a huge difference for people,
I
you're
can only hope.
helping bring them to the source of how you healed and how they can heal. I mean, that's huge.
I
I
hope
feel
so.
like I want to say thank you on the behalf of people who
Uh,
thank you,
well,
thank you.
it's really credited to Anthony, you know, the medical medium information.
Absolutely.
That's where it really all comes from. Because without him and his connection and him saying to me, you can, you know, you can get better and your body is not attacking itself. Um, that's what I hung on to, you know,
Yeah,
and
me too.
he's gotten better, you know, more and more information about this in his books as he keeps publishing. He shares more and more and more, and that's been a huge help to the people who deal with LS. So
And since it was 2015, did you get to meet with him in person?
well, it's a funny story. I started listening to his radio shows, and back then he didn't have this massive, massive following that he has now. He had
Right,
hundreds of people following him, but now
right.
it's, you know, millions.
Yeah.
So anyhow, I was able to call in on a radio show, and he took a question. He took a question from me. But at that point, so that was in the summer of 2015, and at that point, I was too embarrassed to talk. I wasn't talking about the LS publicly. Instead, I talked about the Hashimotos.
Oh, okay.
So we had a chat about that, and then and I signed up for a consultation with him. Um, and you know, and then, you know, of course, you're put on this waiting list. You go into a lottery. You know, you might whatever. And so then I was away in October of 2015, and I got the call that my name was pulled and I could have a consult with him. But meanwhile, my husband, he would have like he would have killed me if I spent that kind of money. So I was like, oh my God, I don't have this money. And I had talked to him like literally 8 weeks prior, and he had given me guidance. So I said to the woman, thank you so much, you know, but I think I'm going to have to pass because, you know, of the reasons I just told you.
Right.
And so she was like, I said, you know, give it to somebody else who hasn't had a chance to talk to him at all. I gotta have a sip of water, sorry. She was like, oh my God, you know, that's so nice. And I'm thinking, oh, well, I wish. But so anyhow, I passed on
It
that,
is though.
you know, whatever. And then, they directed me to to two other practitioners that at that time, you know, were available at a lower price, whatever. So later I did save up some of my own money and reached out to one of those people and started working with her. And she started giving me the guidance. So that was Dr. Nicole. And she started giving me guidance for getting on the protocols and whatnot. But then in 2016, When Anthony opened up his practitioner support service,
Mm-hmm.
I signed up for that and got in on that.
Right.
So I got chosen for that, and then was able to have a consult with him personally at that point.
That's awesome.
And I didn't skip that one.
Right. You knew then. You were like, oh no,
So yeah, and that's when he assured me, like, no, this is definitely, you can heal from this. And he said he's healed, through his work, he's healed many other women who've gone through this. So
yeah, it's amazing how much when he talks about every single different illness and symptom, how much you can feel and hear in his voice that he gets it. Like he's not just heard it, but he feels it and he experiences it, and he has such incredible compassion. And I remember, when I read the first book and when he said, this is not your fault and you can heal. And I honestly, A, felt a paradigm shift reading the book, and B, I felt like every sentence in that book had my name on it. Ichoda, this is not your fault. Ichoda, you can heal. Ichoda, your body is not attacking itself. And I felt like I was transformed just reading the first book. So I can only imagine what it would be like to have him there in front of you saying,
well,
or on the phone.
On the phone, right? I was never that fortunate. Although I did see him in Connecticut. He did that one live show in Connecticut.
Oh, and you got to go to it?
I did get to go to that.
I had tickets for California, and we were in the process of selling our house, and it kind of went longer than we expected it to, as far as like our dates of actually getting the house listed. The selling itself took no time at all. It flew off the thing. But so I had to sell my tickets because I was like, oh, we're not going to be to where we can go to California in time. And I sold my tickets to someone, so they got to go. And I was so bummed that I missed it, because I kind of thought there'd be another opportunity. Like, who knew that things were going to take off the way they did? And that, it was like, no, this literally is a once in a lifetime chance. But
yeah, I didn't get to that one either. And I thought the same thing you did. I thought, well, I'll get to the next
one. Right. Nope. No next one. That was it. That was the last one. But that's great that you got to Connecticut, though. That's really cool. Yeah.
I saw him from afar.
Loved listening to those older shows where he had the call-ins and stuff and was talking to people. And I just think now, like, did people know? I'm sure a lot of people did know who like went to see him in person in the older days when he was, had no social media and nobody knew about him. It was so purely word of mouth. And what that must have been like, because people would really have to make a journey to see him, they would really have to. I mean, I'm sure there were people in his state who were closer or whatever, but for the most part, it's like people would really travel to see him and stuff like that. Like, oh, that's just amazing.
Even in Connecticut, there was a man who brought his daughter from like Puerto Rico.
Oh, wow.
Flew all the way there. Like, that's people beautiful. Flew in from all over the country.
Yeah. Oh, that's so beautiful. I just like that a dad would do that for his daughter. Like, that's awesome.
Yeah, it was amazing.
It's amazing. That's so cool that I feel like it's just so amazing that, like, the person that I love listening to how people connected with the medical medium information, because it is often like I was down on my hands and knees praying, or in my case, it was, kind of that. Like, I was at my last point of like, I just always felt like there had to be a way, but I didn't quite know what it was. And there was something in the back of my mind saying, what about raw? And which is not the whole, obviously I know now, it's like, that's not the whole picture, but there was something like, maybe look back at that. And then another chronically ill friend of mine and I were both kind of, it's like we were super into the research and the science and all that stuff. And we were always comparing notes on what we had found because we had similar symptoms. And we also were kind of into the woo-woo stuff. So we would talk about the spiritual stuff, and we would talk about, I don't know, just like anything that was kind of I guess, considered out there and woo woo, which now I'm like, if only I had known then. And then I swear this is in my memory, she's the one that said to me, you got to listen to this guy on the Hay House Summit, this guy, Anthony William, the medical medium. She said, somebody I know told me about him, and she like used his information, and they've had great results with healing or something. And I was like, oh, okay. So I listened to the summit and I was like, oh, this sounds really interesting. I really want to read his book, right? And at that time I had such severe brain fog. I'm not sure what happened next, but some amount of time later, I remember feeling like I was having a lucid enough day that I could maybe read a book. So I opened up my Kindle and I went to see like, what could I read on my Kindle? And there was his book. And I was like, oh, I wanted to read this. How did this get here?
Right.
No memory, no recollection. I don't know what I guess I ordered it, but I don't remember it at all. I don't remember ordering it. I just opened up my Kindle. There it was. I was like, oh, I wanted to read this. I guess I'll read this today. And that's what happened. Like, that's how I read the book. But it was such a profound experience reading it, because like nobody in my whole history of like all the doctors and professionals and everybody that I had seen and all the alternative practitioners, and nobody had ever said, this is not your fault and your body's not attacking itself and you can heal and there are answers. Nobody ever said that. And I specifically did ask. In fact, I asked. Every time I would see a new practitioner, I would say, okay, like, oh, yay, I have a label, I have a diagnosis. Great. That means that you must have answers. Like, what is the root cause? I would even ask that question. What is the root cause then? Because I couldn't find it in any of the research I was doing. So I was like, well, these people have been specializing for years in this. They would know, right? They've done more research than I have. No, nobody had the answer to that question. And here he was in one book saying, there are answers. Here they are. This is how you can heal. And I was like, what? It's here. I knew it existed. I knew it had to exist, because before that, it was like, I had lost all hope practically. I have to say practically, because obviously I still read that book. So I must have had a tiny glimmer, a tiny spark. There was this tiny part of me that thought, there's gotta be a way. There's gotta be a way. Because it's not going to be this. I can't live like this. I'm going to die. Like, I'm going to leave this planet because my body can't continue like this. Like, it's going to deteriorate. And then, it was like that. Those are the two options. There either has to be a way or I'm not here anymore, So I'm always fascinated by how, because it just seems like, that's kind of the point that people get to, like, and that person just happened to come into your life and be like, hey,
yeah, I really see her as an angel. Like she was an angel, that kind of just came in and shared this information, like it was a message.
Yeah.
And somehow she was able to deliver it and bust through my resistance about mediums, because I had this big, like, woo-woo to me was like, oh no, I'm not about the woo-woo. I'll go spiritual, but I won't go woo-woo. Right. And but there was something magic happened. I don't know. And as soon as I dove in, it was like I was all in. I was like, this is what I've been waiting for. Because up until then, during those 14 years, I had been exploring other practitioners. I did some gluten-free, I did some cleanses, I did, and through that process, some things did alleviate. Nothing went away, but some of my migraine symptoms alleviated when I went off of refined sugar. I realized that my thyroid was connected to gluten. That kind of was a whole little thing.
Yeah.
But it was never enough to get over the hump, into really healing, until I read that book. And then it was like, I'm all in. And plus what I loved about that book was that I keep touching over here because that's where I have it.
Oh.
I touch it, it's like my is how he does that whole, sharing the 4 stages of Epstein-Barr and how it develops, and excuse me, and I could look back on my life and suddenly I was like, oh, because I was never diagnosed with mono.
Me neither. Yep.
It was
Yeah.
tonsillitis as a child.
Right.
Had my tonsils removed. And he talks about that. And I was like,
Yeah.
oh, I mean, I had no clue. Back then, you just get that stuff done. And it just was like everything fell into place. I had migraines since I was a child. I had the bald spots. I had terrible allergies. And all of those things he describes, as you go forward. And as a young woman, menstrual cramps, endometriosis, like bad, all that really horrible monthly cycles. I couldn't get pregnant, all that stuff. And, it was just like one thing after another. I was like, oh my God, oh my God, oh my God. And that's when I knew, like, I'm in 100%, 150%. And I never looked back. And you know what? All those symptoms have gone away.
That's amazing.
Yeah.
That's amazing. And I'm hearing when you're talking about that, I'm like, and so much of that stuff, like you said in the beginning, you just think, oh no, that's just how my body is. It just is that way. It
Yep.
wouldn't even occur to you that you could heal it. Like it just wouldn't even occur that it could go away. Cause there's so many symptoms that healed for me too, that I just was like, no, this just is, my body's just weird. It's just like this.
Yeah.
That's just what life is like. It just does these things, and it's just always going to do those things because it always has. And that's just me and what I have to live with. So, and it's amazing how many of those things disappeared. And I was like, oh, I didn't, it never occurred to me when I started healing on this, but it never occurred to me when I read the books or anything that I could get out of chronic pain.
Yeah.
I had chronic pain in my back for over 20 years. I was like, oh, I just have to live with that. But what I was trying to heal was like the mast cell activation disorder, the POTS, the dysautonomia, the chronic fatigue. The chronic fatigue was honestly like I would say that was at the forefront of everything, because the brain fog and then the just complete inability to function or move or do anything. Those were my top priorities. I can't think and I can't move, and I just am trapped in like a lump on the sofa all the time. And so I just wanted to be able to have any energy at all to do anything. And that started happening even from like the first day of celery juice. It didn't go from like 0 to 100 or anything like that, but I had energy, which I had never had in years. Like I had been fully out of gas in my tank for like a year and a half. And I just not able to, like he says, living on Sofa Island. I lived on my sofa. I'd get up out of bed in the morning. I'd go sit on my sofa. I'd be there all day long. I could stand up for like 5 minutes. I could make it to the bathroom, come back. Sometimes I'd go stand outside while my son bounced on the trampoline, but I'd have to lean on the trampoline to hold me up because I couldn't hold myself up or anything like that. If I left the house, it had to be in a wheelchair, stuff like that. And so that's what I was looking to make an impact on. It never, ever even entered my mind that chronic pain could disappear, or my depression, or my anxiety, or the PTSD, or so many things. I can't even think of all the symptoms, but just never entered my mind. And when those things did disappear, I remember when my pain disappeared, I didn't even notice. I don't even know when it happened. It's just one day I was like, wait a minute, something's different.
Yeah.
And then I was like, wait, there's no pain anywhere in my body. And I was like, what is this? I didn't know, like, what, how do I not have pain? I have not had pain in over 20 years. Like, I was stunned. I was so amazed. And I was like, I can't believe this. This is such an incredible, it was a miracle. Like, it really was a miracle. I mean, after the first 3 days of celery juice, when I felt like a little bit of energy coming into my body, like I literally, when you live on Mattress Island, I think, or Sofa Island, you become sort of so in tune with what's going on inside your body because that's all you've got. Like you can't do much out there. So you're just inside yourself all the time. So when I felt like I drank that celery juice the first time, and I didn't feel wired like with caffeine, but it felt like things were waking up, like my cells were waking up in my body. And I was like, well, this is new. Because then I still had enough energy to like make the smoothie, and then I could make the salad after that. And then when my husband came home, he made dinner. But like that continued 3 days in a row, and that was unprecedented. And I was like, that's when I started like I was like, I have to document this, and I started writing a blog about it because I was like, I can't believe what's happening right now. Like this is crazy. This has never happened before. But it was just so amazing to feel that. Like I don't know, I felt like that was miraculous. After 3 days it felt miraculous, and then it just continued miracle after miracle from there, each step of the process. Whereas someone from the outside could be looking and would be like, how is that a big deal? But when you're the one who's living in the body that's a lump of nothing that can't do anything, and you start to regain functionality, however small it might look to the outside, it is gargantuan, when you've tried everything and nothing else has worked for years. And oh my gosh, I feel like everything that happens in my healing has just been so miraculous and so profound and so incredible. And I'm so grateful. I'm sorry, I kind of went on a tangent there. This is
No,
supposed
that's
to be about me.
No, but you know what? I can relate in some way because I had sciatica, terrible sciatica, and I couldn't drive like 20 minutes, to get to work without terrible pain.
Yeah.
And I did notice also pretty quickly when that, like I could go a little stronger, a little longer drives. And then all of a sudden, I don't know, one day I had to go to another town. My dad lives in another city, and it's a 3-hour drive. So I took the 3-hour drive and I went and I did my thing, and I got back in the car and I drove home. And on the way home, I was like, wait a minute. What?
Where's the pain?
Right. Oh my God, my passenger is missing, right?
Right.
I made it the whole trip without any pain. And it was just like, it blew my mind. It blew my mind. And then on the other side, I was never on Couch Island or Mattress Island, but I was I'm one of those people with the Hashimotos and the Lichen sclerosis, where on the outside, you look fine.
Right.
Nobody knows.
Yeah.
So they're like, well, what are you complaining about? You look fine, and you're like, oh, if you only knew my secret, you only knew my secret and what I lived with every day. And when I go home, and the amount of fear and the anxiety and all that stuff, you just, it's like, what do you just fake it, and act like you're fine when really you're a wreck, and just to function and go to work and do what I had to do. And so, yeah.
Yeah, like Anthony says about that, how it can be kind of a blow when people say that. They're like, well, you look okay. And you're like,
right.
Okay, well, but I'm still suffering though.
Yep.
Like you're trying to tell somebody about your experience and they're like, well, but you look good. And you're like,
right. Well,
you've just completely dismissed everything I said to you. And
exactly.
like, he really, see, that's the thing. He so sees us because he's like, that can be such a blow to people. And it is. It's like,
yeah.
I mean, in the chronic illness community, that's kind of like a running, like, I actually created a bumper sticker that said, not all disabilities look like this, and then had the little wheelchair icon person. And I said, some disabilities look like this, and it had a standing person, because not everybody that has a disability or is affected functionally is in a wheelchair. Some people walk around and they look totally healthy, but you don't know what people are suffering with. And so, I actually made a bumper sticker about that because it wasn't like an ongoing thing that, that's like what everybody in the chronic illness community kind of complains about, is that it's, like, you don't have to be in a wheelchair for your illness to be valid and to affect your life and for your functionality to be affected. Some of us ended up in wheelchairs, or some people are in wheelchairs. They are also affected. And, but it's,
Right.
yeah.
And that's why, I love
hard
like
when you
Anthony.
look fine.
Yeah. And Anthony's message is so good as he talks about, how it's so important for us to have compassion for each other
Yeah.
and compassion for ourselves, and that is a theme I also keep coming back around to, no matter who I talk to, you just never know what people are dealing with.
Yeah.
And try to not assume, anything. Everybody struggles for different reasons, and we have to be kind, to each other, because we just don't know what journey, you're on versus I'm on versus so and so is on, and
Absolutely.
they're all different. So,
and when somebody is speaking about their experience, I think one thing that going through all of that suffering gives you is the ability to hear, like, just witness it and be like, if somebody says that, you don't say something like, well, you look good.
right.
Let me
You're
just
not
erase
alone.
everything you said.
It's like in my case, LS, when I got diagnosed, it was considered extremely rare. Like the guy that I saw, the gynecologist, he happened to have written his senior thesis on LS.
Oh, wow.
He was like the local expert. He didn't know he didn't know anything.
Right.
He didn't know anything. It was all a mystery to him. But what he did do is he put the fear of God into me by saying, well, you got to be careful because it could turn into cancer. You got to be careful because of these lesions. You have to be careful. You have to be careful. You can't do this. You can't do that. And, so just this overwhelming, like, okay, be afraid of not only your body, but now all these other things you can't do.
Right.
So, you can't go in a swimming pool. You can't, forget hot tubs and all that jazz. And he told me don't ride a bike. And I was like, I didn't listen to him on a lot of this stuff, but still, it's just like, I don't know. I don't know where I was going with that. I lost my train of thought, but yeah, so I was told that, it was so rare. And then what I have found is I talk about it. Well, so that just kept me even more in shame.
Right.
It's so rare. Nobody has this, so you can't talk to anybody. And then I find out, like, it's not as rare as, they say it is. It's certainly not as, it doesn't affect as many people, but there's plenty of us out there, plenty.
Right.
With this diagnosis who struggle. And I know when they get in touch with me, they're always like, is it really, did you really cure yourself? I mean, you're kidding? Did the medical medium information really work? Because they're going through what I went through. They can't believe it because they were told, never, never, never. And I was like, oh yeah, you can heal. Anthony's the real deal.
Yep, absolutely. It's the same with so many diagnoses, because like mast cell activation disorder, which was one of mine, and then Ehlers-Danlos syndrome, which is supposed to be genetic, right? It's a connective tissue disorder, so it's like, oh, that can't possibly heal, but guess what? It can. It can actually. I've gotten stronger and stronger. I used to like I said, I couldn't hold myself up, and my connective tissue has gotten stronger and stronger. I used to sublux all the time. I had a car accident shortly after my son died. My first son, when he died, I ended up in a car accident where I got rear-ended, and so my around my shoulder blade, I can't remember the numbers of that one. My cervical spine was like kind of like that, kind of went sideways and back or something. Anyway, it got really subluxated. So that was always a spot that used to come out of alignment constantly. Like I was, before I had that diagnosis, I was I grew up with chiropractors, like from the time I was like 7 years old. So I was always at a chiropractor's office. Like I was their favorite patient because I was there all the time. Like every chiropractor loved me. I made so much money from them. But I haven't seen a chiropractor in years now. It's been at
Wow.
least 3.5 years. I stopped going out of alignment like that. I stopped subluxing, and so I don't. It'll occasionally happen, but not like it used to. And when it does, it'll kind of work itself back in. So, and it used to just be all the time, and like shoulders and um, even my fingers, my hands, and stuff like that, my feet, and none of it doesn't happen anymore. I used to get those really painful cramps and in my feet and in Charlie horses and stuff like that. And I never, it doesn't, it just, none of that happens anymore. And it's so,
Amazing.
but yeah, it's like stuff like that, like POTS and dysautonomia, mast cell activation disorder, Ehlers-Danlos syndrome. Those are the kind of the main ones that I talk about. And that's, people are always like, really, are you sure, like really mast cell? And I'm like, yeah, no, really though. Really, really. I got all these foods back that I couldn't eat. I like stopped reacting to everything in the world. And I still have chemical sensitivity. I am still chemically sensitive. But Anthony said that's kind of one of those things where if you have chemical sensitivity, you're kind of always going to have a level of sensitivity, which is true, but that your recovery time becomes
Yeah.
much quicker. And that has absolutely been true for me. My recovery time is so much faster. It used to be if I got some kind of exposure, it would take me out for like weeks or months. And now it can be like an hour and sometimes not even that. Like I just recover so quickly. And so I'll take it. Like I couldn't even go outside without a mask or even be in my own car without a mask before
Oh.
to protect me so I could just breathe. And if you've worn a mask, which everybody at this point has,
Right.
you know that you can't freaking breathe in those things. So it's like, this is to help me breathe, but I can't actually breathe. Um, but it's better than the chemicals. So until this, like I wouldn't even ever, I stopped taking my mask with me. Like I take it with me, but I never wear it anymore. I always just
Mhm.
have it. You never know, like just in case. And now
Sure.
obviously it's a different situation, but before it's yeah, it's like, yeah, no, really, really, this is the information, whatever you're dealing with, from lichen sclerosis to mast cell activation disorder to Ehlers-Danlos syndrome and everything in between and around. It's like, this
Exactly.
is, you can heal because it's not about the specific diagnosis. It's about, this is how bodies work. This is how your body actually works. This is what's really happening. And this is what actually helps it heal. These are the foods, and this is what they do. These are the supplements, and this is what they do. And these are the angels, and this is what they do. And these are the meditations, and this is what they do. And you put it all together, and I mean, that's how you heal. It really does work, and that's why it works. And, ha.
Yeah. It's amazing. It's amazing.
Beautiful.
So yeah, I'm all in for the woo-woo now.
All right.
Angels,
Woo, we got you.
angels, all of it. I'm in. I'm in totally.
Oh,
Totally.
yeah. Would you mind to talk about that a little bit? Because you said that you were so like not about that
Yeah.
before. You were like, no, none of that for me. So
Right.
how was that for you starting out with like, did you take the whole thing and be like, okay, I'm going to do it?
Um,
Talk to these angels, even though this is weird to me.
but yeah, that's sort of how it started. Exactly. And the first one I really reached out to was the angel of sleep
Yep.
because being, menopausal, I had a lot of issues with sleep, waking up, night sweats, all that jazz. And so I was like, all right, he says, to do this. So I'm going to give it a try. I came into this having a belief in a higher power. So I did have that,
Yeah.
concept. And that I was all in on that. The whole angel thing and whatever. that was a whole different story. But I said, all right, I'm desperate. I will try anything. So I just started talking to the angel of sleep, and it helped.
Yeah.
She helped.
Yeah.
And I was like, oh my God, because my sleep started improving like big time. And then I would get up and I would thank her, and when because I would still get up a lot in the middle of the night, but I would go do my business and I would get back in bed and I'd say, angel sleep, please help me get back to sleep. And I would fall right back asleep. And I was dumb, like you said earlier, I was dumbfounded that, so she's been my entryway into, the angels. And, and now I reach out to various ones. I don't always remember their names, but I do call them, the angels and the unknown angels, and ask for guidance and help all the time. And if I pay attention and I'm quiet enough, I can see the guidance, that they're directing me in. So, and that's been really helpful. So, yeah.
That's wonderful. I
Yeah.
love
Nature
that.
is a big part of my healing journey too, like getting out in nature and
Yeah.
trees and plants. I'm big into that. I like to hug rocks. I like to hug trees. I'm really into the energy level of nature being her powerful self, and healing my body a lot, standing on the earth and grounding, and all that's because of Anthony,
Yeah.
So, yeah.
I laughed at the hugging trees because in my younger life, in my 20s, I worked at a daycare center with 4-year-olds. And at recess, when we'd go outside, we had like 2 little spindly trees in our court, in our play yard. I mean, it was mostly concrete, but then there was like these 2 little trees. And I would always have the kids run up and hug the trees, and we would thank the trees for the oxygen they gave us and the shade that they would give us in the future. And and I would think of all the things the trees did, and I'd have the kids do that, and they loved it because I was in my 20s, so I was like one of the younger teachers there. And they loved me because I would play with them and I had energy. So they would love like following me around and being like, okay, let's go hug the trees. And we'd all run to the trees and we'd hug the trees and thank them. And they loved doing that. They'd ask me to do it if I didn't remember. And it made me think of that. And I was like, oh, hugging the trees. That's always been my thing.
Oh, yeah.
I've always been a tree hugger. My friends when I was young, my friends used to be like, call me the hippie and stuff like that. That was like a pet name for me. And some of my friends would be like, hey, hippie. Because I was like I'd be like, let's go outside and go spend time in nature and watch the clouds and like hug the tree. And we would do that. I would make my friends do it too, not just the kids at the daycare. I take my friends to the park.
That's so great though, what you taught those kids. Like, what a huge resource for them to have, as they go forward.
I hope some of them remember it.
Oh, I'm sure they do.
They're all grown now. I would just, oh man, I'd love to know what happened to all of them because I still remember those kids. I remember.
That'd be so fun.
I loved them.
What trees are you hugging, if you could find them?
Right. It was so fun. But yeah, I'm like, the nature and reading in the books about the nature meditations and stuff like that, I was like, oh, I'm down with this. I'm down with this. This is he's talking to my heart here because yeah, it's nature and bees and birds and
yep.
I'm always
I was
staring at the sky.
This morning I was just looking at I don't even know how I opened up to this page, like early in his book the first book when he's introducing himself. And he talks about, his story in detail. And he talks about the soul, the heart, and the spirit.
Yeah.
And about how your soul's in your brain and stores your memories and your experiences, and then how your spirit can get broken, as you go forward. And and soul damage. And that's what the nature meditations are all about, is to help repair any
Yeah.
soul damage that happens to us along the way when we're going through, our chronic illness and or just other hardships we experience in life. And there's plenty of them. And why they're so important. And I was like, oh my gosh, I got to go back and read this book again.
I know. I love the first book so much. I know.
Me too.
It will probably always be my favorite just because it is the first one that I read, and it made such an impact. It has his story.
Yep.
Oh, and his
and it's
story.
like I always refer to it as the foundational piece.
Yeah.
It's the foundation, the real groundwork that all the other books build off of.
Right.
And it's my all-time favorite too.
Yeah, it is. Oh, and I listen to it and read it, and I've got it on my Kindle. I've got the hardback. I've got it on the audiobook.
My first one, my true one. Hold on, I'll show you this since you're confessing. Where is it? Oh, here's my first one. I had to have it because I was going through it so much, the pages started falling out. So I had it bound.
That's great. Take it to Kinko's or wherever.
So I can fold it over, This is my fancy one when I'm doing a video or saying, buy my book. The truth is mine looks like this.
I love that you did that. Mine has bunches of the little tags and stuff in it for sure. It's all of my books are like that, like all bookmarked up with the sticky tabs.
Yeah, and some are higher. So my really high tab is angels.
Oh, awesome! Yeah, I made a printout of the angels.
Yep.
From all the books, so I could have it next to my bed all the time. So I made a printout and I keep it in there. And then if he introduces new angels, I'll add them to it, like write them in there. But then I keep it next to my bed for reference, so that when I'm going to bed, I'll look and be like, okay, who do I ask for? Who do I need to talk to that I haven't talked to in a while? Because I get in habits of talking to the same ones. I have like a routine at night that I do, like it's the same one all the time. And then some of them I like forget, and I'm like, oh, how do I forget this one? Like, so I have my printout. I love it.
That's awesome.
I love that. Yeah. So many of us see. That's why I love talking to somebody who's like so into the information.
I'm so geeked out. It's crazy. Yeah.
That's wonderful.
Yeah. I love it. I love him. I'm so grateful for him and spirit, and like thankful, because I would never be sitting here talking about all this if it weren't for him and his information.
Right.
It's just talk about life-changing. Yeah. Just amazing. And that's why I always tell people, like, even if you're skeptical, like I get it. I came to this very skeptical also. Like, just try to have an open mind. And if you're not, if his story doesn't resonate with you, that's fine. Skip the story. Get into the other information, because it will resonate.
Yeah.
He talks about what exactly is happening with your body, and some people say, well, I've listened to his radio show and I don't like his voice. I'm like, okay, so you don't like his voice. Listen to the information. Go on his blog and read it. Read the information.
Listen to the audiobook. It's read by a British woman. You don't even ever have to hear him.
Right? Have you gone on his blog? Like, oh my gosh, there's so much information he shares for free. It's all there.
Yeah.
And so anyhow, and that was, I think, the other big thing for me was, he's not selling anything. I mean, he does sell his books, but it's not like he's selling a program or powders or you can only do this or only do that. He's not rigid like that.
Right.
He'll tell you what you need, and you find your own way with it.
Exactly. And it's always with so much compassion too.
Oh my gosh.
Even like the recipes from the earlier, the first book or that he had on his blog around that time.
Yep.
They were, it's like, I felt like those recipes were compassion because they helped us ease into it. Like that broccoli mac and cheese recipe. that helped my family transition into eating this way because, yeah, it had a little more fat than, is ideal or whatever, but that stuff had the mouthfeel of mac and cheese for real.
Right.
And you didn't feel deprived or like you were giving up something. It was just like, okay, well, this can work. This is a good comfort food and stuff like that. And, we don't eat anymore, but it was such an incredibly helpful way to transition. And a lot of the recipes are like that, where it's like, this is a super helpful way to transition. And then eventually down the road, you're ready to go fat free and, not have a lot, more of that stuff. But I just feel like everything is just dealt with total compassion and total love. When I was reading the first book too, I think what was also helpful for me is, again, in my 20s, I did this personal growth program. And one of the things they said in it was, the person leading the seminar, one of the first things he said was, you don't have to believe anything that I say. You don't have to agree with me. You don't have to like me. Nothing like that. All I'm going to ask you to do is to just try on what I'm saying, like a jacket.
Yeah.
You try it on. At the end of all of it, if you don't like it, you take the jacket off, on your way. If you like it, you can keep the jacket. It's totally up to you. But just for the purposes of like, while we're doing this seminar, just try it on and just think, what if it were true? Like that. And that has stuck with me all these years and has helped me in so many places where I might go into something with like total skepticism or not believing, but then I would just think to myself, like, I'll just try it on. Why not? And that's totally what I did with the medical medium book. Was I was like, well, I'm going to try on the whole thing. So I'm not just going to pick and choose what I want to do. I'm going to try to do all of what he says, the meditations, the angels and stuff like that. And I felt super weird talking to the angels at first too. I was just like, oh, well, it doesn't matter. I'm in my room by myself. Nobody can hear me, like nobody can hear me. It's just me. So, okay, I can talk out loud in my room by myself, like I can do this. So that's how I started. And then over time, and obviously it did make a difference and it did help. And over time, like, and doing the sunset trust meditation, I did build trust, and talking to the angel of faith every night, like he said, like I did build faith. And I'm like, well, it worked. And then after a while, it's like I could feel that I was supported and that there was somebody there, and then I wasn't talking to myself. And
you're not alone.
Yes,
you're not alone.
Exactly. And I'm not alone.
So important to me.
It's huge. It's huge. So yeah, that has always helped me. Okay. If you would have a message for anybody who's starting on the path or on the fence or not sure, what would you say to them? What would be your message?
I think it would be just like what you were just saying, like just keep an open mind. And the good news is, like you said, you don't have to do all of it at once. You can tiptoe in.
Yep.
You can just pick what works best for you. Start eating 1 apple a day. Add a little bit more fruit to your day.
Yeah.
Just start slowly and don't compare yourself to, people like you and me that have been doing this for years, we're in deep, right?
Right.
And anybody who's new, to the information, as I share it, I say, like, don't even worry about that. Let's just work on easing up, how much, whatever you're eating.
I didn't start in the place that I've gotten to now. That took time and time that I built up to, the way I eat now.
Yeah. So I think that's just what I would really share, is keep an open mind and tiptoe in at your own comfort level. It doesn't have to be an all or nothing affair.
Absolutely. Thank you so much. And where can people find you?
Oh, great.
If they want to find you on social media or wherever.
Yep, on social media, I am, well, let's see, on Facebook, it's Catlin Wellness and Nutrition. And on Instagram, it's just Catlin Wellness. And then I have a website that is catlinwellnessandnutrition.com.
And I will put links below.
Okay, great. Thank you.
Thank
Oh,
you
this was
so
so
much.
fun.
Thank you so much. And thank you everyone for watching. If you like this video, you know what to do. Thumbs up below. You can subscribe to the channel by hitting the subscribe button, and you can ding the bell next to it if you want to be notified when I post a new video. I plan on having more interviews because these are so much fun and so enlightening. And I love connecting with wonderful people from the medical medium community who I've been sort of indirectly connected to this whole time, but like directly connecting like this is great, and sharing healing stories to inspire others. Thank you so much for being a part of this, Kat. I really, really appreciate it.
Thank you, Choda. It's been delightful, and it's been great to have a conversation with you too. I've been a follower for a while and love reading your information, and you're an amazing person. So, and what you've done is just so inspiring. So inspiring. So
thank you so much.
Thank you for all your work.
I feel the exact same way. Yes, I'm inspired by you, and I appreciate you and all the help you offer to people and your unique perspective on, on something that maybe not so many people have, but also so many people have that, don't know how to talk about it. So giving a voice to the people who need that voice, oh, yes. It's beautiful, and I so appreciate it.
Awesome.
So thank you.
Thank you.
We will see you, or I will see you next time, and Kat will see you next time. She does lives on her Instagram too, and shares information. And so we'll see you next time. Bye-bye.